It's time for another fantastic speaker and a fantastic session there. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, so we'll try to make this a very quick half hour, but yes, we're going to spend the next half hour talking about consumer centricity and emerging technology and how to bring tomorrow into today. Because, slides? They'll come up in a second. Because tomorrow is coming into today faster and faster than it ever has before. Now, I'm sure you're all very familiar with Moore's Law, and you've probably seen many variations of this chart. Processing power is only one aspect of it. And if you think about it, processing power is what's bringing us devices that are faster and faster and smaller. But it's interesting because processing power kind of tells us what the future is going to look like. But there are actually two other factors that tell us when the future is arriving. And I would say that actually processing power falls second in the list. You also have connectivity, and you have battery life. Yeah, that thing called battery life. We all know. So connectivity is the most interesting one in my mind, because it's not really the processing power that leads to adoption. It's whether or not we have the bandwidth to receive it. If you think back into the old days of the internet, and thank you, Ron, for showing us those old days, because I haven't seen some of those logos in ages. But back then, it wasn't our computers that were keeping us from watching video online. What it was the bandwidth. We couldn't shove video down 28.8, could we? We had to wait for broadband to become ubiquitous before mobile video, internet video became a thing. If you think about that jump to internet video, that required broadband. That jump into mobile video really required 3G. So actually, I think, as like a harbinger of what's coming, I think connectivity is the most important. We can't forget battery life, though. Battery life is what makes our things keep ticking. However, we as humans are surprisingly addicted to technology. How many of you carry a battery for your battery? Probably most of you. We as humans will find a solution for the battery issue. So yes, batteries are important, but somehow we adapt to that problem more so than we adapt to any other problem. We will make it work, even if it means carrying a battery for your battery and then a backup battery for that battery. Women, handbags, I know they're in there, and I know that's why you guys carry briefcases. It is not for your laptops. So, as we get these things, actually consumers adapt to them. Now, when I say consumers, I want you to think about yourselves as humans, not as marketers, not as brands, not as agency people, but as people who live an everyday life. What do you expect now? Did you ever think you would think that 2 hours for delivery was slow? Did you ever think that you would be able to order food delivered to your door, not just any food, but your favorite dish from your favorite restaurant delivered to your door? That's what we expect now. You have also the aspect of your life ends when it is not immediately available. How many people were affected by the Facebook and Instagram outage yesterday? How many of you were losing your freaking minds? I was. I couldn't post my stories. So our expectations have just accelerated. But not only that, once a consumer adopts something, we don't tend to go back. It tends to be our new expectation, and it builds and it builds. The other thing is relevance. Now we can pretty much get anything we want, anywhere we want. Global brands, even those weird little snacks that you think of, that you grew up with as children, we have a way to access them. So with this much choice, it has to be relevant to us. And finally, discernment. Because there is so much choice, there have never been so many opinions. How many opinion sites are there? How many of you have said, oh, I really fancy that restaurant, but it only got 4.5 stars instead of 5? We've never been this picky before, but we are now. And as I said, once we get there, we don't go back. So as a brand, we have to focus on that. For our brands, we have to think about consumer centricity, because that is how brands grow. We need to understand what are they thinking, their emotional mindset. their need state, how many people they have influence over, either personally in their circle or digitally. We also need to understand where they are. And I don't just mean location-based. I don't just mean physically, though that's really, really helpful. We also need to know what kind of device they're in front of, because it gives us a clue into their mind state. We all have a different mind state when we're sitting in front of a big screen in our home. Doesn't matter if we're watching broadcast TV, slinging YouTube onto it, watching Netflix. What the content is doesn't matter, but chances are high we're watching longer form, and we're willing to watch also and get engaged with longer ads. If we're on a mobile device, it's probably less so. So these things are important for us to know. Also, once again, that back to the relevance and the discernment thing, how can we make it more simple? As I said, consumers have more of a choice than they ever had before. So how do we make it easy for them to want to be with us? And Consumer Obsessed is absolutely leading the way. You're familiar with all of these brands, and I know that all of you have seen Amazon's napkin drawing, right? The consumer in the heart. We've all seen that. All of these brands built themselves on being consumer-centric and absolutely focused on the consumer. I think Casper is a really interesting one. How many of you are familiar with it? It's an American mattress brand. Okay, quite a few of you, actually. So mattresses. Mattresses are fascinating. We spend, what's the average they tell you? You should replace your mattress every 10 to 12 years? So we spend every night for 10 to 12 years on this thing. I mean, I've had relationships that have lasted less. And we have to make this decision by lying stiffly on a mattress in some weird showroom with fluorescent lights, fully clothed, with our shoes on. And we have to choose our night partner for the next decade. Very awkward. Yet we did it. So Casper came up with this brilliant idea of a 100-night trial. So you get the mattress delivered to you, try it for 100 nights. If you don't like it, they'll take it back. Now, guess what? After 100 nights, you're probably going to like it. You've gotten used to it. You're kind of inclined to like the brand as well, because they're really thinking about you. And they have grown from just a little D2C brand to now having some stores, and now their future purpose is reinventing the future of sleep. So they've given themselves a higher purpose as well. They're not just your average, sell it cheap, get it to the consumer fast. They've really put a lot of thought into what consumers want and how to service that. So that's why, if you look at it, consumer centricity plus emerging technology is how you get to accelerated, scalable growth. Now, you don't normally see emerging technology paired with the words scalable growth. You normally see it paired with disruptive, exponential, oh crap, it's coming, but not scalable. And it's important to think about this because that's what we want. We want scalable growth. Now, you might be standing there going, yeah, but you just talked about a mattress. Where was the technology in that? Well, the technology may not have been on that front end to the consumer, except for how they ordered it. But think about all of the systems that had to change in the back end. Think about how they had to realign the entire way they distribute those mattresses, how they accept returns. Guess what? There's probably quite a bit of technology in there. So in order to move from digital marketing to technology-enabled marketing, you have to look at everything. Because if you think about marketing in the broadest sense, you're talking about first touch through to post-consumption, which means you have opportunities in the store. You have opportunities on the delivery trucks. You have opportunities on the package, and you have opportunities after consumption. This is what you need to look at. However, this is how most companies are. We've got a digital marketing strategy over here, probably driven by, surprisingly not, your marketing team. There's probably somebody over there doing digital corporate transformation, but it's probably in your IT team. And then you might have either an upstart young brand or an upstart young person doing some innovation labs, and they are most likely in a different building, in a cool setup, wearing jeans and trainers so you don't break their vibe. I'm not saying all of these need to come together, but they need to work together. This is how we move towards technology-enabled marketing. Because if you don't get all of these initiatives, not I would say it's not exactly like they're aligned, but they're kind of in sync and moving in the same general direction so that the corporate strategy can lead it. That's where you want to get to. As I said, I'm not saying these people sit together because that would actually be quite a nightmare. I love this quote by Dr. Astra Teller, which says, "Innovation is a cycle of experimenting, learning, applying knowledge, and then assessing success or failure. And when the outcome is failure, that's just a reason to start the cycle again." The reason I like this quote is because he says to start the cycle again. He doesn't say to redo it. He doesn't say to try it again. He says start again. Because sometimes when you start again, it's going to look nothing like it did when you started the first time. And actually, for success, it probably should look nothing like it did the first time. You should be learning from it and evolving. So how do we do this, transforming today for an exponential tomorrow? Well, we work with clients on this, and we found that actually there are 3 kind of entry points that almost every client fits into. On this side, we have kind of quick hit, short, startup matchmaking or emerging tech curation sessions. In the middle, we have specific briefs that we're given. And then all the way over here, some of our clients are looking for a systemic innovation program from the ground up. So I'll give you some examples of what these might look like. So the startup matchmaking, it's very light touch. We've got a couple of clients who do it. One of our clients has key focus areas every month. It might be VR, it might be AR, it might be AI, it might be content creation, but they have a theme. Then we bring to them 5 to 7 startups that fit that theme, and out of it comes a pilot. So every month there's a quick pilot, just a quick hit, get a pilot out, see how it works. Rapid experimentation on a very frequent basis. We have another client who does similar, except for they don't really have a theme. They're just really interested in what we've seen over the last month that looked interesting to us. And so from that, they'll figure out whether or not there's a pilot. For them, because it's not themed, it's kind of harder to pull it off every single month. So we get a pilot with them up and off the ground about every 2 months, because that's usually when something strikes. We need to see a larger pool. Just because it's not themed and it's not, there's no intention going in except for experimentation. In the middle are specific briefs. So for this one of our particular clients, they have 3 data gaps. Now, I know all of you are immediately thinking audience data, aren't you? You've all jumped to probabilistic or deterministic, and how am I filling that unique user ID data gap? Nope, not that data gap. This is a beverage company. They want to understand their stock in more real time. They want to know what's actually on the shelves in any city in more real time so that they can be better prepared from a distribution standpoint. Guess what? Technology can enable that. They're also looking at last mile delivery. It's a large company. They are designed to drop huge deliveries to grocery stores. Now we have more and more small stores, we have more and more pop-ups, food truck scenes going insane. Now they have more and more people wanting somewhere between 1 and 5 cases, but they don't have a system for that. So we're working with them on that. Of course, we're looking at delivery companies, but we're also looking at smaller refrigerated warehouses in specific locations around cities so that it's closer to that last mile, which then enables that delivery. So it's kind of a 2-prong attack on that one. And the final one is much more what you'd imagine in the media world, a go-to-market strategy. They have a lot of opportunities where they don't have the ability to put point of sale up in retail. And so they're looking for a way to communicate with, sorry, I think my mic is dropping, to communicate with their consumers with technology in places that they don't actually control. Is it still okay? Yeah, okay. And then for a couple of our clients, they want the whole program. They want the whole shebang, a systemic innovation program that will help them figure out how to take their company forward. So guess what? The first part isn't terribly sexy, but it's absolutely required, and it takes a long amount of time. It's the program design. It's understanding what they're trying to achieve, how they get briefs in, who's the selection committee, what's the judging criteria, so everybody gets a fair shake, and how do they select those briefs. Then the implementation of those pilots, and then scaling the successful solutions. Now, the key thing, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, actually, when I talk about pilots, is when we look at these pilots, the other key thing about them is we're just looking for companies that can fulfill the pilot. We are not necessarily looking for scalable at the beginning. Because if we started looking for scalable at the beginning, it would really limit our ability to experiment with our clients. Because how many small companies are ready to go global from day one? They're not. So think about it as dating. Think about it as Tinder for startups. Think about it as Tinder for innovation. We choose partners because they can deliver on that brief. Now, if it is successful, then we can work with that partner to either scale, maybe they are the one we're going to marry after all, or we're going to find other partners that look like them in other countries or for other brands. But we now know the criteria that we're looking for, so we can better identify and vet startups to help us scale it out. So some examples of areas of focus that a lot of these clients have, and probably not surprising, new routes to transaction, because people are expecting to transact anywhere, anytime, from any device. And with new things like NFC, to pay in any different way. They're also looking at new consumer technologies. I mean, come on, aren't we all thinking about voice? And if you have a global company and multiple brands, why have everybody test the same thing? So it's a structured way to test emerging technology. And the last one is in-store retail improvement. We work with a lot of FMCGs that do not have their own stores. Now, that's the biggest barrier, is you can't control the way you're being seen in that last 6 feet before purchase. But they do have a team that does that. Most of them have some sort of a retail team. Not sure. Sorry, I think because it slipped. Is this better? Okay, sorry, thank you so much. Because the retail team does this. The retail team goes into grocery stores and brokers these deals, and they also have to provide governance. So what they do is they go in and do an inspection. So they've brokered a deal that has this perfect shelf, and they have to see, are they getting what they brokered? Is it the perfect shelf? Do you have the right amount of product? Does it align with everything that you expected in terms of shelf space, height, bandwidth, everything? So these retail teams go in and they do this, and it takes about 3 days. Well, we threw a little technology at that. We found an AR company that specializes in retail. So now they bring in a tablet, they take a picture of the shelf, and then the software does the differential, spits out a report. They type in Dear Store Manager, signed Inspector X, and it takes about 3 hours. So that's yet another way that technology can enable marketing, because as I said, marketing is everything until the consumer has consumed your product. And even more after that if you have a product with a long life cycle. So for Mars, one of the things we've done is they're looking at the changing nature of digital impulse. So a lot of these pilots can be nested to have one theme, and this is one example. Because they have a lot of products that rely on impulse. You've got the Snickers, you're not yourself when you're hungry. You've got your Dove or Magnum bars, those luxury moments where you spoil yourself. So these are all impulsive moments. So one of the things they're looking at is new ways to drive moments, targeting in media. So moment targeting, mood targeting, that sort of thing. In the middle, new ways to create impulse in ordering. How do you replicate that end of aisle situation right by the cash register when you are in a digital store? And there is no end of aisle because there's no end of anything, because everything is available with just a touch of a keypad. And the last one is also ways to solve the route to market impulse gap. And this one's really interesting. One of the briefs that we got was to see if we could figure out how to deliver a single bar of ice cream to a consumer in Australia in 30 minutes or less. And that's because they saw, these snack companies, well, consumers are expecting, we want things in smaller increments and faster. These snack companies, small ones, are coming out and fulfilling that need. So they wanted to understand if we could do that. The team loved this one because we got to look at some of our clients like Uber, we got to look at delivery systems, but also some bright spark had the idea to look at drones. So I had to pull the team off of looking at drones for 3 weeks. And we did find a solution, but we also found out in that 30 minutes is too long for ice cream, unsurprisingly. Because ice cream comes in a little plastic sheath in a cardboard box that's built for a freezer. So we switched it to candy, because candy has about the same price point, and then we'll be able to give them the cost analysis They will know their own margin, and then we can have a discussion as to whether or not there's enough padding in that margin for us to start looking at either shorter distribution periods, thermal packages, or thermal delivery systems, thermal in the delivery. So maybe it will work for ice cream, but just not in the first instance. So those are just some examples of how you can start getting ready for this technology-enabled marketing world. We have a few minutes left, so does anybody have any questions? All right, you just got 9.5 minutes back into your life. Thank you.